Beneath a rocky ledge in the Blue Mountains, water quietly drips into a forgotten bath carved by hand more than a century ago. The bushes reclaimed much of what was once here, and for the full story we need to look beyond the moss and weathered stone. A story of power, ambition and heartbreak, and the man whose dream began and ended in these hills. This is the story of Lady Martin's Bath. James Martin was only 18 months old when he arrived in Sydney with his parents, John and Mary, in 1821. They'd come from County Cork in Ireland aboard the convict ship John Barry. His father, a skilled horseman, started work at Government House in Parramatta, grooming the new Governor Thomas Brisbane's horses. While still living in Cork and tending horses near Castle Hyde, James's father John didn't realise his skills with horses were being observed and admired by Thomas Brisbane when he was general at neighbouring Fermoy Barracks. Brisbane couldn't help but offer John Martin the job as his horse groom when he scored the coveted role as Governor of New South Wales, far away in the colony of Sydney. It may have been a step down socially, but starting a life in what was still a penal colony was a massive opportunity that couldn't be turned down. For 14 years, the Martin family lived in the servants' quarters by the Government House stables, close enough to catch glimpses of power, yet far removed from it. It was there that young James grew up, a sharp-eyed boy absorbing the rhythms of colonial life, dreaming beyond the paddocks and cobblestones that framed his world. By 18, his ambition had already outpaced his circumstances. He left school and began work as a writer and sub-editor for the Australian newspaper. A remarkable leap for the son of a horse groom. Within a year, he was acting editor. And by 20, he turned his keen mind towards the law, becoming a clerk for George Nichols, the paper's former editor turned lawyer. This poor Irish boy was already on a trajectory few could have imagined. By 28, James Martin had once again outgrown his surroundings. He was admitted as an attorney to the Supreme Court and wasted no time establishing himself, opening practices both in Pitt Street, Sydney, and in Parramatta where his journey had first begun. But it wasn't enough for him to argue the law. He wanted to shape it. Politics soon beckoned. His first attempt, standing for the electorate of Durham in 1848, fell short. But Martin wasn't one to retreat easily. At the next opportunity, he ran again, this time for the legislative seat of Cook and Westmoreland, a vast electorate that stretched across the Blue Mountains to Lithgow and Oberon, and he won it. A year later, he lost it, supposedly for lacking the property qualifications required to hold office. Yet, in true Martin fashion, he clawed his way back, regaining the seat the following year. In 1853, at the age of 33, he married Isabella Long, daughter of a wealthy ex-convict, William Long, who had built his fortune importing liquor. Together, James and Isabella settled into Clarence, a grand two-storey villa overlooking Sydney Harbour at Potts Point. Over time, their home would ring with the laughter and chaos of 15 children, 8 sons and 7 daughters. Then, in August of 1856, Martin achieved what would have seemed impossible for a poor Irish groom's son. He was appointed Attorney General of New South Wales. From 1863 to 1864, James Martin served his first term as Premier of New South Wales, the first of 3. He would return to the role in 1866 and again in 1872, each term cementing his reputation as one of the colony's most capable, yet controversial, leaders. His service didn't end there. In 1873, he was appointed Chief Justice of New South Wales, a rare honour for any man, let alone one who had once called the servants' quarters of Government House home. A few years earlier, in 1869, he'd been knighted Sir James Martin, a title that carried the weight of a lifetime of ambition fulfilled. When Martin began his first premiership, the colony was in the midst of an ambitious expansion. The Great Western Railway, a marvel of engineering for its time, had begun its bold climb from Penrith across the Blue Mountains. When completed, the line transformed the once isolated ranges into a retreat for Sydney's well-to-do, offering cool air, sweeping views, and the kind of quiet that soothed the noise of the city life. Springwood, Falconbridge and Linden became fashionable escapes for the privileged few, a scattering of elegant cottages tucked between the trees. Among those drawn to the tranquility was Martin himself. In 1876, he purchased 393 acres near Springwood. A year later, he added another 954 acres, this time in Linden, right beside the property of his friend and fellow statesman, Sir Henry Parkes. Martin named his vast estate Numantia after an ancient hill town in Spain, famed for its endurance and defiance, a fitting name for a man who had risen through grit and determination. By late 1877, a modest wooden cottage, also named Numantia, stood near the railway line on the northeast edge of his land, a peaceful mountain retreat for one of the most powerful figures in colonial New South Wales. For privacy from the rumble of passing wagons and carts on the Western Road, and the occasional puffing of a steam train on the adjacent line, a tall stone wall was built behind the cottage, enclosing a quiet courtyard. James Martin began to shape his mountain retreat into something more than a simple bush cottage. He planted flower and vegetable gardens, dug wells and carved out ponds. He even had chickens and pigs, a curious contrast to the grand offices and chambers of Sydney, yet one that suited him well. Whenever his duties allowed, Martin escaped here to the cool air of Linden. It was a place for family, reflection and friendship. Evenings were often shared with his distinguished neighbours, Sir Henry Parkes, Sir Alfred Stephen and Professor Charles Baddam, the men who helped shape the colony. You can imagine them sitting together on a wide veranda, glasses in hand, their voices mingling as they discussed politics and the ideas of federation. But Martin's ambitions didn't stop at a simple retreat. On the western rise of his estate, he had a private railway platform built, fittingly named Numantia, for exclusive and easy access from Sydney. His vision stretched higher still. The cottage was too humble, too temporary. What he imagined was a mansion, a grand residence perched high on the hill overlooking his vast estate. A local stonemason named Paddy Ryan cut and shaped blocks for the project. The foundations of a future mansion were taking place, including 2 large reservoirs and a smaller one that we now know as Lady Martin's Bath. Years later, a Federation bungalow named Bernoul would rise upon those very foundations, incorporating some of the sandstone shaped and once destined for Martin's dream home. Yet, not everyone shared that dream. Lady Isabella Martin, elegant and charitable though she was, had grown weary of it all. Their Potts Point home was cramped for a family of 17, and worse, it often caught the foul winds drifting up from the Rushcutters Bay wetlands. The mountains offered her very little solace. She disliked the isolation of Numantia, the roughness of the bush, and perhaps the distance it reflected in her marriage. Much of the mansion's construction cost had been covered by her own family inheritance, and Isabella eventually refused to fund another stone. Construction came to a grinding halt. Then, tragedy struck. In 1880, 2 of their children died, followed by Isabella's sister. The grief proved too heavy to bear together. The Martins separated. Isabella moved first to Vaucluse, then to Point Piper, leaving Clarence and Numantia behind. The unfinished mansion, with its grand stone base and silent reservoirs, became known as Martin's Folly. a monument to an unfulfilled dream, and to a bath carved for a wife who never saw or used it. James Martin remained mostly alone in Clarence. He began subdividing and auctioning off parts of his once proud estate in 1883, and again the following year. After years of declining health, Sir James Martin died at Clarence in 1886, aged 66, and was laid to rest at St Jude's Church in Randwick. His good friend, Sir Henry Parkes, mourned him deeply. In tribute, Parkes had a grand boulevard built in the heart of Sydney, Martin Place, so that his friend's name would forever echo through the city he had served. In time, Isabella's guilt caught up with her. She had a large Grecian-style vault built in Waverley Cemetery, and there, Martin's remains were reinterred. When she passed away in 1909, she was laid beside him, a joint resting place overlooking the sea. Today, Lady Martin's bath lies quietly in the bush, its spring-fed water a silent witness to ambition, loss, and a dream never fulfilled.